Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. The following interview is designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be. Your host, Derek Champagne, is the founder and CEO of The Artist Evolution, a full-service agency building successful brands, marketing tools, and campaigns, and also the author of the best-selling book, Don't Buy a Duck. And now, let's begin today's Leadership Series interview.
Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where our goal is to inspire you to become the best leader that you can be. I'm super excited about our guest today. I'm a fan of basketball, obviously. I'm a fan of sports, but I'm a bigger fan of marketing and an even bigger fan of unique and interesting stories. And that's Melissa Proctor. She is the Executive Vice President CMO of the Atlanta Hawks. How cool is that? And the author of the new book, From Ball Girl to CMO. And I love that smile. You love what you do.
I do. And I'm just so thankful to be in this place at this time. I mean, I started out as a ball girl on the court for the Heat. And so when I think about these full circle moments and I have the opportunity to share my story, it's awesome every time.
Give us a few highlights. Like, I don't want you to give away the book, obviously, but give us a few highlights of your story that we can our listeners can relate to and get excited about.
Absolutely. Well, I'm originally from Miami, Florida, born and raised. And in the beginning of my book talks a little bit about my experience going through Hurricane Andrew as a kid. I was 12 and really having experienced that and how it really changed the dynamic of my life. And I'm an artist, so I've always loved drawing and painting, and that's kind of core to everything that I do. There's some samples of my work in the book as well. But when I was 15, I told my mom that I wanted a job. And she said, okay, you can get a job as long as it's in whatever you want to do for the rest of your life. And I had no idea, but at 15, I was a fan of basketball. I would watch it on TV with one of my cousins, but I'd never played because I was always in art school. And so I told her I was going to become the first female coach in the NBA. And she said, okay, go get a job in the NBA. And I don't think she even knew what NBA stood for. She's from Belize originally. She was a nurse.
I love that
she had
belief,
no
though.
concept.
That's so great.
No concept. And so I did. And I wrote a lot of letters and made a bunch of phone calls, knew no one, had no hookups. And finally got connected to the equipment manager at the Heat. And they said, hey, it's a grunge job. No one wants to do it. It's mopping up sweat and folding towels. And, we have no girls. They're all boys. And it doesn't pay, by the way. And I didn't care at that point. I was invested. And so I was really persistent. And ultimately, they invited me into the Miami Arena to work my first game. I didn't know how to rebound. I didn't know how to pass. And that was the beginning of my career in basketball, was mopping up sweat for the Heat.
I mean, there's so many layers there, obviously, and I know you'll talk about them in your book, but and I love our next generation. I know that's important to you, as investing in the next generation. You're leading by example to show, hey, you may not start at the top of the ladder. Like sometimes, in fact, most often, you don't just get to do that, right? Talk more about that, and then how important it is, because I've read about you a lot, and that you have had an interest in the next generation. In fact, that's one of the things you brought to the Hawks, was investing in that next generation.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what I say to this day is I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And going to college at Wake Forest University, I'm on an art scholarship. I was a communications major because I enjoyed understanding people and what made them tick and why they did what they did. I never took a marketing class. And so when you think about kind of the skill sets and curiosities that are natural and things that you bring to the table, being creative, being culturally curious, really enjoying communications and interpersonal communications was the fantastic recipe for a marketer, but I didn't know that at the time. And so ultimately, I had heard about this internship at Turner Broadcasting, and they said, send us your talent in a project. And at the time, my talent was art. And so I designed a magazine, which was like a TV guide, all about myself and my brand, with writing samples and art pieces. And I made some funny ads. So it was me, the NBA on TNT ad, as well as me as Cleopatra for a Turner Classic Movie ad. Awesome. I made myself a Powerpuff Girl. If I was working for Cartoon Network, I didn't even know what network it would be. And ultimately, TNT Marketing said, you sold yourself so well to us. We think you would do an amazing job of selling our content to consumers. And that was really impactful for me. And I actually put this magazine in the back of my book because people are like, how do you do it? And I said, what's amazing to me as a marketer, people who want jobs in marketing but have no idea how to sell themselves. And you are the first product that you're bringing to the table before you're working for anyone else or in any other context. And so when I talk to the next generation, I'm very much always, being aware of how do you make yourself an asset to people, not a liability on their time, and figure out what you want to be famous for. At least in this role, everyone can fulfill a job description. So what's going to make you stand up and stand out from, the pack? And that's really important. And so, transitioning to my time currently at the Atlanta Hawks, when I came on board, my role was to help define a brand strategy for the team. And we had just come out of racial crisis, right, at the time with some of the general management. And it was a really interesting time. But the very first thing we had to do was define our target audience and what did we want to be for. And, all of my previous experiences kind of came back to that. And what I discovered was, in Atlanta, especially, a lot of people had moved here, from other places. And if you're from New York and you're a Knicks fan, there's nothing I can do to not make you a Knicks fan. Like that's just what it's going to be.
Right.
But what we realized is a lot of those people were settling in Atlanta and having kids. And we could find a way to be the team for those kids. So looking at the next generation of Atlantans and what that looked like. It wasn't just a demographic of, Gen Xers or millennials. It was really an opportunity to figure out how we can get into the hearts and minds of folks who were born and raised in Atlanta and were connected to the city in different ways and really be the team for them. And so, that connection, that authenticity is what we've done with the Hawks brand. And I think is important for personal branding as well.
That's huge. Thanks for touching on that. And yes, the personal brand, what you just shared with me is really important. I think too, as a marketer, most of my life is you talk about having a long-term vision of understanding that next generation. Some brands, in the NBA outside of just think of a corporate brand, dude, there's not always that patience. It's all about fast acquisition. And
absolutely.
You also have to have, one is you have to have a good team around you that allows you to have that long-term vision. And the next is you've got to be patient to have it. And there's kind of that simultaneous, how do we get people now in conversions, but how do we build that next level? That's the kind of people I want in my organization, or the kind that understand here's what the next generation looks like. That long-term planning is amazing. How do you have permission to have time to have that kind of vision and to implement it?
Well, we really looked at it much broader than that. It was a generational fan building strategy. Wow. Because while that may be your target, from a brand perspective, you can have a core at your brand target. And so knowing that we're building the brand for next generation Atlantans, the uniforms we designed, that acts that we would bring into the arena to attract single game tickets buyers, that was all based on that. However, don't get it twisted. There's other audiences as well. B2B is a hugely important subset for our business. Being in the heart of downtown Atlanta, knowing there are businesses all around us, we actually transformed our arena to be more compelling as a product for businesses to want to come in and entertain clients or use it, for HR teams as perks for employees. That was a very intentional target as well, but reached at a very different way. That was a physical space. There were more, at the time, more all-inclusive areas where people can come in with a ticket, but food would be provided, parking would be provided. It was a different way of looking at that experience. Definitely an important target and a lot for the business space as well. But understanding what that was, and as a part of that corporate partnership as well, kind of layered on top of that, which adds another element because, you want to be connected with partners who are aligned with your audience. So if we know we're getting the youth and all of the next generation of Atlantans to our games, brands that are interested in connecting with those audiences would also want to come along and be a part of that. And the one thing that I can control as a CMO are wins and losses. Unfortunately, I'd make no decisions of who's on the court. If I could, man, I tell you, there'd be a lot of Trays in the world, Trae Young. But
I bet you get some good seats though, don't you?
Yeah, we do. But it's really important for us to look at, there's so many stories and important opportunities to talk to different communities within Atlanta. And at the core, we have an ownership team that really believes we are a civic asset before we're anything else. So the example of State Farm Marine being the first team with all the teams in the NBA to open up our building for early voting with this election, I was a greeter just yesterday at the arena greeting people and welcoming them into the building during our early voting period. Every single team member has been trained in poll working and handing out stickers and all of these things. And so that's really important. So I always look at it from a holistic perspective. But, we have a lot of different stakeholders and constituents, and we can be a brand that can reach all of them in ways that are important to them.
Wow. Very, very cool. I love how you're doing that civic responsibility. On a side note, we have a client that's in the construction space, and we got to go in that arena a few years ago while it was being redone. I was
awesome.
So blown away, and fly drones around and do a cool video around the reconstruction. I was blown away. I think it was the second largest arena renovation outside of Madison Square Garden
history.
in the world.
That's
right? Yeah, in history. And so, I mean, talk about the changes that happened there. I mean, I saw it when it was dusty and crazy, but I just couldn't believe the massive, I couldn't believe the level of renovation happening within that building.
You know, and what I've learned, because obviously there are a lot of things, the challenge with that was anyone who passed by it saw nothing. So we can say from roof line to base line, the entire inside of the building is different. But if you're driving by, it just kind of looked like, oh, it's the same building. And so there was a lot of work and education that we had to do. And we learned through that experience. Sometimes people just put cranes outside to be like, we didn't do any of that. But it's important and people saw the difference. And I think what was most impactful for me is when people came in for the first time, when it was completely redone, it was like mind blown, eyes open wide. And it was such a transformative experience.
And it shows the investment that you're making into this next generation and this whole new, how exciting is that? All right, I've got a few more questions for you. I mean, 100, but I want to be respectful of your time. Tell me about the 2000 to 2021 MLK Nike City Edition uniforms. I think you're excited about that.
Oh, that's an understatement.
Let's talk about it.
I mentioned to someone, I'm like, this is one of the most exciting things in my career so far. One of them. Yeah. And when I initially got the role as chief marketing officer, I had the opportunity to work with Nike on the City Edition kind of platform. So last season's Peachtree City Edition was kind of the first one I was able to work on. But this was 100% from concept as an idea, something I was passionate about. And so I brought the idea to our CEO, to Nike, to the league. And we said, hey, if we can work with the King Estate and family to make this a reality, it would be awesome. And so it's been about a 2 to 3 year process, which has been crazy, from design and approvals and IP and rights and all types of things, and really building out the community aspect of it. But when we got to, the beginning of what's going to be next season, no one could have ever anticipated the cultural moment that the world is in right now.
Wow.
And so
you've been planning already. You've been in stages all this time, because it takes a long time to do all that.
It takes a long time. And people are like, oh, wow, how did you guys do that? I'm like, this was not at all. Like, this was Dr. King meant so much to the city of Atlanta and his legacy. And in working with the estate, it was important to them to really ensure that Dr. King's message was, really brought to the next generation. And because that's who the Hawks targeted, it was such a perfect, synergy in working with them. But at the end of the day, when we were able to launch it, the idea of knowing that we're going to earn these letters was kind of the campaign that we looked at wrapping it around, because we understood that between voting and marching and protesting and standing up for rights and equality and all these things that are inherent within our organization, diversity and inclusion, to know that we now have this opportunity through a uniform to not only, obviously represent Dr. King and his legacy in the city, but help to educate others and move them to action. It was so much more than that. And so in a way that we've never done before, all of the proceeds from the sale of those uniforms that the Hawks sell, we're going to give back to the city of Atlanta to help with economic empowerment for communities of color. And so personally, I'm so proud to really been able to drive and lead that work. But the impact that we're going to have on the city beyond is going to be phenomenal. I don't know what next season looks like. Obviously, it'll be very different just based on how the world is. But I know this is a campaign and a uniform that I love it. And it looks cool. On top of all the other amazing, meaningful things, like people who see it are like, man, that's really sharp.
Excited. Congratulations on that. You have a lot of exciting things going on. Just a couple more minutes. I want to hear about the Hawks at Home program. Yes.
So Hawks at Home, every year for many, many years, the Atlanta Hawks have executed basketball camps and clinics throughout our communities. And we've grown over time to have a number of different camps that we execute at a number of locations. And obviously, with the beginning of COVID, we had a guiding principle within our organization that it was always going to be about safety first for kids, for our team members, and just everyone in general. And so early on, we decided we were going to pivot from physical camps. And, the team that I work with, amazing, led by a guy named John Babel, we really talked about the importance of making sure that we can still help educate the next generation of Atlantans on all the benefits of playing basketball and all of the things that they can learn through teamwork and, team building and all these things. And so we early on thought about, like, how do we do this digitally? We had a lot of part-time coaches that would be out there. So, we worked with them and some of our team coaches and players on building out content and put up this platform called Hawks at Home. And we said, hey, at the very least, we can send out some packages. So some kids got basketballs and jerseys that they could use for practicing at home. but it was an opportunity to reach people where they were at the time of, quarantine during the pandemic. And it's extended. So we recently just partnered with Atlanta Public Schools to extend the program because there are some kids who are still in school remotely. And it's been fantastic. The outpouring of support. We've had live sessions once a week that have included players and coaches and other people and kids being able to ask questions in real time. And so even my daughters participated. It's been a really, really great program. And, something that we probably would not have executed to this extent as quickly had it not been for the coronavirus. But due to that, I think it's an amazing tool and resource in our arsenal to continue to help build bridges to the community of Atlanta through basketball.
I've got a special place in my heart for kids, obviously, like many of us do. And I've got a 9 and an 11-year-old, and I've just seen how all these kids are displaced right now. And some in areas more than others really need this outreach and for encouragement, and especially when it comes from an organization like the Hawks. So I'm glad you're doing that, and I'm glad you were able to deploy it quickly.
Thank you.
Tell me, so, we're all operating in pandemic, and, this will be some evergreen content, so we won't stay on it, but I don't think we'll all have forgotten about it by the time someone listens a few years from now. We'll still remember what it was. How do you, just quickly, what's a mindset? Because I can't imagine, and I know people in the sports arena space who are just suddenly going, what is our business model now, right? What do we do? How do you navigate through those things, especially from a marketing and a brand management perspective, just in general? What's the mind? Because we could talk about that all day, right? But what's the mindset for going, oh, wow, things are about to change completely the way we normally do business. What do you do?
It's interesting because I realize, and I actually write about it a little bit in my book, it's all around creativity and flexibility. Because I'm a creative at the core, I almost think that my approach to any business challenge is strength and playing in the gray. And I've heard it other times in my career when people don't know what to do and they have a blank sheet of paper. Someone gives it to me and said, hey, we need this job. Can you help figure it out? I thrive on that. Cool. I enjoy that. Where I do think there are a lot of other people who are very much around black and white. Right. Tell me exactly what I need to do, and I will execute that flawlessly. Right. And so when people ask what my superpower strength is, I would say the ability to be both creative and strategic. And so now, while I'm not painting pictures anymore, I really think of my creativity as ways that I apply it to business challenges. And so this entire pandemic has been exactly that. But, the ability to be flexible and nimble and move on a dime, but find creative ways to approach these challenges is what we're doing every single day. No one knows what tomorrow will be. We don't know what next season will look like. But, in working with my team, they're like, how did we launch a uniform during a pandemic? 2 uniforms. We launched our core uniforms as well as these. And there was no script. No one's been through this before. No one knows exactly what to do. But I think collaboration is critical. And I work very closely with my peers within the organization as well as the leaders on my team who are all phenomenal. And so much of it is just the ability to be flexible, because without that and nimble, without that, there's no way. We have to approach every single day as if it's something new. So when I hear, well, in the past we did, while I respect it, and a lot of times taking that information is important, but as we look to the future, we have to create a new path.
I love that. Such great advice. Purpose and impact driven organizations, these things give them an opportunity to step up. And when you talk about the civic opportunities that you've had to make a bigger impact, it just gives us an opportunity to step up and even really are we here for our purpose? Are we here for the impact that we're going to make? And you've had an opportunity to live that during this time. And it just kind of puts a bigger spotlight on it in a way different way. And you've got to be creative and figure those things out. But I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Just the last question, just give us a plug for your book. I'm really excited about it. We're going to give a few copies away too. But talk to me, what do you hope the reader gets out of it? What will they get out of it when they read it?
Absolutely. Well, the book is called From Ball Girl to CMO. It's available on Amazon. Also on my website, melissamproctor.com. And, the main takeaway that I have in the book that I'd love for people to get is the power of guiding principles. We just talked about how important a values-driven organization is when you know what you stand for. In the book, I talk about the importance of doing that for yourself. And so I have a chapter on guiding principles and defining what that is, or what that filter is that you look at any decision that you make in your life, whether it's a job decision or a personal decision, and defining that for yourself, but then also going back to it on a regular basis. And so for myself, I define these guiding principles, about mid-career, because I had to live a little bit to understand what was that important and non-negotiables for me. But one is the ability to be both creative and strategic, which I talked about just now. The second is always adding new tools to my personal toolbox. If there's work or something that I can do in my sleep, I don't need to be doing it because I always want to continue to grow and develop. The third is my mom was not the best when it came to money management. And so, I don't want bill collectors calling me. So I need to be able to pay my bills on time, maybe ahead. And since I've had my daughter, I really am passionate about investing in the future and generational wealth, because that's not really talked a lot about in the African-American community. Wow. The fourth one is some sort of work-life balance or harmony. I know people say balance, it's never really balanced, but the ability to live my life. I always believe that life comes before work in any context, and family first. And so if my daughter has a dance recital at 4:00 on a Tuesday, I need to be able to go there and do that. And having the flexibility to know when I'm at work, I can give 100%, but when at home, I can do that as well. And the final one for me, which is almost one of the biggest personally, is authenticity, being able to bring my entire self to work every day. I have locks, I have a nose ring, I'm very laid back and informal. I talk to you like I talk to my kid or my boss. And it's important for me to be able to be consistently and authentically who I am and bring that into an environment. If there are environments that don't accept that, then I know that that's not the right environment for me. And so more than anything, I want people to read the book, and the journey is cool and there's some interesting things. It's funny at points, but there's a lot of lessons that I've learned along the way. And I wrote the book for my daughter initially because my mom passed away some years before my daughter was born. And I had all these questions for her. And I said, God forbid anything happens to me, I want to make sure that my daughter has something tangibly from me that she can know around all the lessons that I learned in this crazy journey that I've been on.
Well said. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being our guest today. I know your time is valuable, so thank you for sharing generously. Thank you for writing this book and sharing so others can learn as well. So again, that is From Ball Girl to CMO. You can find it on her website, which we'll share in the show notes, or on Amazon. Look that up on Amazon. Thank you so much, Melissa Proctor. We're happy to have you as our guest today, and we look forward to watching the next great things that you're going to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. This interview was designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be.